What's happening, y'all? Welcome inside the Fantasy Stock Exchange. Bush coming at you solo today to talk about my 5 biggest must starts and 5 biggest must sits at the running back and wide receiver positions. As I do every Saturday, I talk about 20 players, a lot of injuries that we've had this week. So some of these guys are going to be some backup players, of course, especially at running back. So we got to update these vids throughout the week that I do the start sit videos because we get new information as the week goes along. Basically, what this is a culmination of all the start sit content that I do throughout the week, as well as the DFS article that I write for Draft Sharks on Saturday. Before we get into it, guys, if you enjoy this video at any point, please hit the like button, comment any of your thoughts down below, and hit the subscribe button if you haven't already done so. We're going to hit the intro and we're going to get right into this. All right, let's start off with running backs, and we're going to start with the top 5 must-start running backs. As you guys can see on the screen right now, the first guy on the list is D'Ernest Johnson. Of course, Nick Chubb has officially been ruled out. He has COVID-19, did not clear the COVID protocol by testing negative twice in a row. I'm assuming he has symptoms or something like that. Nonetheless, we have D'Ernest Johnson in a workhorse role because Demetric Felton is no longer playing either because he is also in close contact to Nick Chubb. So Johnson saw 24 opportunities the last time that Nick Chubb was out in week 7 against the Broncos on Thursday night. And that was with Felton in the lineup. So the fact that both of those guys are out means that it's pretty much wheels up for D'Ernest Johnson. The Patriots defense is allowing top 12 adjusted fantasy points to the running back position and is also allowing the second most PPR receiving points to the running back position. So points through receptions, yards, and receiving touchdowns. So if D'Ernest Johnson has a workhorse role, we saw him get a couple targets when he was on the field a couple weeks ago in a workhorse role, then we should see him put up a decent stat line. I currently have him inside my top 15 running backs. I would actually start him over some, solidified guys like James Robinson, Elijah Mitchell, who are in a bit of tougher matchups. So the second guy on this list is Darrell Williams. Darrell Williams is not sexy, but he is getting the role that we wish CEH would get, basically. He's getting the bulk of the carries, over 50% of the routes, all the inside the 5 attempts, 2-minute drill, long down and distance, everything that we want out of Clyde Edwards-Helaire is what we're getting out of Darrell Williams. That makes him an every week starter, especially in a top 6 matchup against a Raiders run defense that has not been very good against running backs. The third guy on this list is Mark Ingram, and Mark Ingram is very simple. Alvin Kamara is out. Of course, more of a pass funnel defense against Tennessee, but the volume should be enough to help Mark Ingram get there and make him a top 20 play for me at the running back position. Number 4 on the list is Melvin Gordon, and I guess you could probably lump Javonte Williams into this as well. The Eagles defense is currently allowing the 8th most adjusted fantasy points to the running back position, as well as the 2nd most rushing attempts overall to the running back position. So when teams play the Philadelphia Eagles, they're running the ball and they're utilizing their running backs. Both Broncos running backs are good plays this week, and especially Melvin Gordon as the primary back, the guy getting about 55-60% of the backfield so far this season. The final guy in the starts category is J.D. McKissic. J.D. McKissic and the Washington football team are 10-point home underdogs to Tampa Bay right now. So 6+ targets in his last 3 games, 24 total targets overall over that 3-game stretch. J.D. McKissic has also ran 60% of the routes in both of the blowout losses that Washington has experienced over the past couple of weeks against Green Bay and against Kansas City. And we're expecting kind of a similar game environment with Tampa Bay being such big favorites and the fact that they have just this much better team than Washington. We expect them to be up big in this game. If that happens, then J.D. McKissic is going to get a lot of run in the receiving game. So quick honorable mention, because this did come out right as I was about to record this, but Zach Moss has officially cleared concussion protocol. So I was going to talk about Devin Singletary being a guy that could be a must-start option for a lot of people. But the fact that Zach Moss is going to be playing definitely impacts Devin Singletary. And I think Zach Moss himself is also a decent play if you guys need a top 25 running back or so. We've seen when Zach Moss is on the field, he is the primary back on this team. And this Jets defense is just absolutely horrible against the run. We saw, of course, what Jonathan Taylor and Nyheim Hines did to them last Thursday. So the sits at the running back position. And this one hurts because I talked about J.D. McKissic already. If you had to decide between J.D. McKissic and Antonio Gibson, I would actually play J.D. McKissic. And Antonio Gibson, we have seen his role decrease as the weeks go along. Of course, he did have a bye week this week, so hopefully that gets him some rest. Maybe they'll implement him into his original role, which we saw at the beginning of the season. But before I can put this guy back into my lineup, if you have better options, don't start Antonio Gibson. You can start him as a top 30 running back if you need to, but if you have Javonte Williams, if you have Melvin Gordon, if you have D'Ernest Johnson, if you have Mark Ingram, if you have some of these guys, Zach Moss, I would start all these guys over Antonio Gibson because the Buccaneers run defense is just so good that A 1 and 2 down grinder, which is basically what Gibson has been relegated to since his shin injury, is not going to be enough valuable volume enough to perform against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers defense. Like I said, I think JD McKissic is going to be more valuable. I would play him. I think Javonte, Tony Pollard, Zach Moss, all these guys I would play over Antonio Gibson. I want to see it first with Antonio Gibson. I want to see him get his original role. Even if he doesn't have a great game in this one, I want to see him at least get back to a 60% snap share running back, get a few targets, get 15 carries or something like that. And hopefully that won't kill me if I leave him on my bench. So Nyheim Hines, the second guy that we're going to talk about in the sits category, he had a great game last week, but again, it came on his normal like 10 to 12 opportunities per game. His volume didn't change whatsoever. The difference was he was playing the Jets, and the Jets are absolutely horrible against the run. The Jags are actually pretty good against running backs. They rank 8th in rush defense DVOA. They're a lot more of a pass funnel defense, which does lend itself to Nyheim Hines as the pass catching running back. But I think if they get any damage done through the air, it'll probably be done by the wide receivers, Michael Pittman Jr. and T.Y. Hilton. So Nyheim Hines, again, on 10 to 12 opportunities a game, it's just hard to trust him. I expect Jonathan Taylor to have a big game in this one. I expect the receivers to have a big game in this one. It's just hard to count on that little of volume out of Nyheim Hines, but you might be tempted to play him given what he did last week, and I don't think you should. So Alex Collins, the third sit on the running back position. He's in a three-way timeshare, basically, as I talked about on Wednesday. If he doesn't score, he's pretty much terrible for fantasy because they use Rashad Penny, in the rotation running the ball. They use him a little bit in the red zone as well. They use Travis Homer on third down, long down and distance, 2-minute drill snaps. So what Alex Collins basically is a 1 and 2 down banger that needs to get into the end zone. And of course, having Russell Wilson back is going to help with that. But I still don't want to start Alex Collins as anything more than a desperation play. I currently have him like outside my top 30 running backs right now. He's not a guy that I'm willing to start. I would start Antonio Gibson over him if you had that decision to make. Number 4 is the Titans running backs, Adrian Peterson and Jeremy McNichols. The Saints run defense is one of the best in the league. They rank first in rush defense DVOA currently. This game is also a very slow-paced game environment based on the data that we have per Football Outsiders. Both of these teams rank among the bottom 10 teams in neutral script pace of play. So we're expecting a slugfest, slow-paced game, probably going to hit the under of about 44 points. I can't remember exactly what the over-under is in this game, but not a game I want a lot of pieces of, and not expecting a lot of scoring in this game overall. The Eagles running backs, the final sits of this video for the running back position, are basically the same as the Seahawks ones, right? We have Jordan Howard, who's basically playing the Alex Collins role where he needs to get into the end zone to pay off. We also have Kenneth Gainwell, who's basically playing the Travis Homer third down, long down and distance, 2-minute drill back role. And then we have Boston Scott, who's kind of mixing into both roles. They all could have a big play. They all could score touchdowns. The problem is you don't know who's going to do it. So if, in my opinion, I would just sit all the Eagles running backs. Don't try and guess if it's a Jordan Howard week or if it's a Boston Scott week. You should have better options this week than to play those guys. So moving on from the running back position to the wide receiver position, we'll start with the top 5 must-start wide receivers. And I swear to God, this list is the oldest cumulative age of the must-start wide receivers that I've talked about. Jerry Jeudy is the only young player on this list, but he is the number 1 guy for me this week. He's commanded 19 targets on only 76 routes this season, which is absolutely wild. 25% target rate on the routes that he's running. And Cortland Sutton only has 9 targets in Judy's healthy games this year. The Eagles are good against wide receivers in general, but the big thing for the Eagles is that they're good against outside wide receivers. They are not very good against slot wide receivers. We saw Keenan Allen pick them apart last week. We saw Tyreek Hill in week 3 or week 4, I believe, go for a monster game against them. And Jerry Jeudy has been playing 60% or so of his routes out of the slot. So if anybody's going to have a big game in this one on the Broncos receiving core, it's going to be Jerry Jeudy. Cortland Sutton's probably going to see a lot of Darius Slay in this game. So Jerry Jeudy is the guy that I'm going to be starting if I start a Denver Broncos wide receiver. Number 2 is Emmanuel Sanders. And I guess you could lump Cole Beasley into this discussion as well. But the Bills are implied for over 30 points per Vegas in this game. Emmanuel Sanders is not a floor option. Unlike Cole Beasley, he's not a guy that's going to get 10 targets per game, but he only catches, 5 of them for 65 yards and potentially a touchdown. He's a big play threat, right? He's either going to give you a big game or he's going to give you a down game. But in a matchup against a bottom 3 pass defense in DVOA, you cannot sit Emmanuel Sanders. With the Bills implied for over 30 points and the fact that he could give you a big play in this one, he's definitely going to be in my lineup this week. Number 3, we have Marvin Jones, and we talk about the Bucs being a pass funnel defense all the time and the Saints and some of these other teams, but the Colts have low-key been probably the biggest pass funnel defense in the NFL this year, ranking 5th in adjusted fantasy points allowed to wide receivers, but 30th to running backs, and being the 2nd-ranked rush defense in DVOA, but one of the worst, 26th in pass defense DVOA. Marvin Jones is a number 1 receiver. He gets a 24% target share every week, 50% of the team's end zone targets on the season. exactly what you want out of Marvin Jones is the type of matchup that you have this week. If he's going to get a big play or a red zone target that leads to a touchdown or something like that, it's going to be in this game. So Marvin Jones to me is inside my top 30 wide receivers for the week. Number 4 on the list is Julio Jones. This one's pretty simple as well. Marshawn Lattimore is expected to shadow A.J. Brown in coverage. Julio Jones could follow in the footsteps of what Chris Godwin did 2 weeks ago, basically where Mike Evans took away Marshawn Lattimore in coverage. Chris Godwin then had a big game, went 8 for 140 and a touchdown because he wasn't facing Marshawn Lattimore, and the Saints don't really have any other good corners outside of Lattimore. So Julio Jones could have his first big game of the season. Number 5, and the final start of the video, is T.Y. Hilton. Like I said, these are all old guys that I'm talking about, all veterans that I'm talking about today, but he is expected back this week after missing last week with a concussion. We've seen him be a big play threat so far this season, most notably against Houston a couple of weeks ago, and the Colts faced this 32nd ranked Jags pass defense in DVOA, kind of as I talked about for Nyheim Hines. This is a pass funnel defense, and they're implied for nearly 29 points per Vegas. So I expect the Colts to be able to put up points via Michael Pittman Jr., Jonathan Taylor, and T.Y. Hilton in the passing game. So moving on from the starts at wide receiver to the sits, we do have Jacoby Myers, who is my biggest sit on the week. This week, this game isn't expected to be very fast-paced, isn't expected to be very high-scoring, over-under of just 45, and most of the steam is on the under, according to the sharp betting right now. Myers hasn't been anything more than basically a first down generator on 3rd and 6 kind of type of wide receiver. I talk about Juju Smith-Schuster, Tyler Boyd, Jacoby Myers, Jarvis Landry. They're all kind of in the same realm. The only difference is that Jacoby Myers hasn't scored a career touchdown yet. He usually is posting these 8 targets, 4 receptions for 40-yard type of stat lines, and that's just not going to get it done in your flex spot, in your lineup. I would much rather take a shot on a higher upside wide receiver than a guy like Jacoby Myers. If you have Van Jefferson, for example, if you have somebody like that T.Y. Hilton, who I talked about already, Marvin Jones, Emmanuel Sanders, somebody like that, I would much rather start over a guy like Jacoby Myers, who is basically floor play, but it's not a very high floor. The Jets wide receivers, another wide receiver core that I'm not going to be starting this week. The Bills pass defense is actually the best in the NFL. 31st rank in adjusted fantasy points allowed to wide receivers, 1st in pass defense DVOA, and 1st in PFF coverage grade. The Mike White fairy tale, in my opinion, is coming to an end this week. I don't think he's going to be able to perform well against this Bills defense, who's been absolutely fierce. They've made, bad quarterback play out of some much better quarterbacks than Mike White this year. So I'm not excited about starting either Elijah Moore, Corey Davis, Jamison Crowder. All these guys are going to be on my bench this week if I can help it. Same goes for the Falcons wide receivers. Olamide Zaccheaus caught 2 touchdowns last week. I'm not chasing that. Russell Gage, for some reason, is always a popular sleeper play for everybody. I'm not chasing him either. Even in a potentially high-scoring game against the Cowboys, I'm not messing with anybody that's not named Kyle Pitts or Cordero Patterson on the Falcons side of things. Number 4 is Rondale Moore. Rondale Moore simply hasn't been on the field enough when DeAndre Hopkins has been out there. So he's not a guy that I'm willing to throw into my lineup because he gets a lot of low value targets close to the line of scrimmage. And of course, he is very electric and he is good in space, so he can make do on those targets. But this Panthers defense is almost as good as the Bills, to be honest. They rank 29th in adjusted fantasy points allowed to the wide receiver position. And Rondale Moore is simply too boom or bust. Probably needs to be in good matchups to be able to hit. And this one is not a good matchup. So he's not a guy I'm excited about playing either. And the final sit of this video is Michael Gallup. Michael Gallup, I want to see a game of him before I actually throw him into my lineup, because coming off of a multi-week soft tissue injury, as I've talked about in the past, I doubt the Cowboys play him more than 50% of the routes or 50% of the snaps this week. I think they're probably going to ease him in, ramp him up slowly so he doesn't re-aggravate his injury, doesn't get hurt again. They do have Cedric Wilson, Dalton Schultz, a number of other, tertiary receivers that can pick up the slack they've been doing basically since Michael Gallup has been injured. So if you guys did enjoy that video, as always, please leave a like down at the bottom of the screen. Lets YouTube know that you enjoy the content, helps them recommend us to other people, helps us grow. Subscribe to the channel as well. That also helps YouTube recommend our content to other people, and comment any of your thoughts down below. If you guys want access to my weekly rankings, rest of season rankings, dynasty rankings, etc., you can go to thefantasystockexchange.com and find out how. You can purchase them outright. You can deposit on Underdog using promo code FSE, or you can become a Patreon, patreon.com/fantasy stock exchange. That'll get you access to our rankings, as well as a group chat with me and Danny personally, and a couple of other great features. So peace out, guys. I'll talk to you soon.